Britain's prisons house more than 50,000 inmates. How many of them are incapable of controlling their actions? For some, can the very notion of guilt apply? Hundreds of studies have measured the brain arousal levels of persistent offenders. And the clinical tests, including those from British prisons, all tell the same story.
For at least the last 50 years, we've been finding that criminals or antisocial individuals tend to evidence low arousal, low physiological arousal.
Low arousal, as we've seen, means the intelligent frontal areas of the cortex are not instructing the limbic system of the brain to generate the appropriate responses a normal person feels.
A person with high arousal is liable to panic and fall to pieces, while an individual with very low arousal will simply deal with the situation rationally. And so this maybe gives you a clinical idea of why low arousal may be useful for a criminal and why it may predispose an individual to become a criminal.
It's very good, just be very, very relaxed.
The recidivist criminal, or persistent offender, suffers from the same brain abnormality that we saw in Danny. Tony is a classic repeat offender. He spent most of his adult life in prison. As with Danny, his upbringing doesn't explain why he took to crime.
My family upbringing was very good, actually. I came from a very loving and caring home. I have no excuses.
Tony was born into a morally upright, lower middle-class family. Just like Danny's parents, Tony's father can't see what went wrong.
The upbringing we gave him, we didn't teach him to steal, or he didn't have to steal. He got what he wanted, more or less, from us that we could give him. I don't really know why he went off the rails, no idea.
Is there a biological answer to the puzzle of Tony's offending? How much of Danny's pattern does he fit? As a child, Tony's pattern of behavior was similar to Danny's. He had all the symptoms of attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity.
When you look back now, it might have been hyperactive. I was always an active child. I was always doing something. I had to be active. I could get distracted very, very easily, especially from the boring things in life. So I can't sit still.
I don't think I ever remember him reading a book. That wouldn't be enough for him to keep him occupied. But just sit quietly, I think, was unheard of.
Other, more exciting temptations beckoned.
A younger person showed me how to steal cars. If I couldn't afford it, oh, I'll steal it. And that was kind of a breakdown of law and order situation, which started at about 11 and got out of control by about 17, I suppose.
And it broke my heart, really, when I first found out he was in prison. I thought his mother, it nearly killed her. Well, it certainly did.
Come on, Jane, keep in with it.
This is Frank, a career villain. He served 15 years for robbing a silver bullion van. His pathway to crime is perhaps more understandable. Unlike Philip, he grew up in disadvantage. Crime, to some in the East End of those days, was a way of life. Frank started to steal in a small way when he was only a child.
I used to feed out of Stratford Market. I used to feed boxes of cabbages and cauliflowers, carrots, onions, thingy, but not to sell. Just take them in the street and give them, let the people in the street have them.
Rita Strange lived next door to Frank. She feels the real trouble started when he got a job managing the local billiard hall. The hall had something of a reputation.
We knew there was all crooks went in there. Everybody knew there was all crooks in there. And I suppose you heard about money you could get. I suppose that's what really started him. He thought, oh, have a bit of money.
Frank and George were best friends.
We weren't rich, we was always ordinary street kids. But if you see someone else making it, however they've made it, whether it's through villainy or whether it's through honest means, sometimes you think, cool, I want a bit of that cake. And I think that's how Frankie was.
But George resisted stealing the cake and joined the Navy. As for Frank, he enjoyed the frenzy and action of boxing. But so do a lot of East End children, and they don't grow up to be criminal. Did Frank box because of an underactive brain which couldn't concentrate at school and craved sensation?
When I'd done the bullying robbery, it was the thrill of it. I would say more so than the money.
So they tell us more about nouns. They make writing more interesting.
Frank is only now learning his ABC. He found reading and writing impossible as a lad. Over 100 studies show that career criminals have a low verbal IQ. Was Frank's disadvantage another bias of the brain to crime?
A far better idea of what the sentence is about. Yeah?
There's another clue deep in the furrows of the brain. When scientists compared the brains of non-criminals with persistent offenders, they found that the language side of the criminals wasn't working as well.
We found the left hemisphere to be much poorer in terms of processing verbal material. And it just may be that processing verbal material is very important in terms of learning social rules.
A conversation between the two hemispheres of the brain is essential if the left side is to control the impulsive and emotional right side of the brain.
An internal moral code is critically important in the development of a conscience. And effectively, if you don't have that internal regulation of verbal processes, then one may be less able to generate that internal verbal code which guides and regulates your social behavior.
But there's still more to the new discoveries of the link between crime and the brain. There may be a fault in the very structure of the brain of the persistent offender. 2,000 such criminals were submitted to a battery of neurological tests.
The recidivists we've studied over the years, the probability is probably over 90% that he has an abnormality of his brain.
From the neurological tests, the brain's functions could be mapped. The grey area indicates low activity. The normal brain is on the left, and this is the brain of the career criminal. The frontal cortex in the repeat offender isn't working properly. The rational area of the brain isn't controlling the instinctive and impulsive limbic area.
We have urges, a gas pedal go system, and we have a braking system to put the brakes on, the inhibition. And what most of these recidivists appear to lack is the braking system. So when that part of the brain is dysfunctional or damaged in some cases, those brakes are gone, and the individual is a victim of their urges and will continue to commit crimes, often silly crimes, and of no real substance in terms of gain for them.
Tony's crimes fit the pattern of criminal brake failure. His wife knows that failing well.
He just does so many things on impulse. He never stops to think about a thing. If it's what he wants to do, he does it. End of. And he won't stop to think of the consequences.
Oh, never mind. Never mind. We got you.
Tony and his wife, married for 20 years, have spent just 3 of them together. She's stood by him and pays him regular visits along with the grandchildren. She's never understood why, with so much to lose, Tony took to crime.
In fact, I'd say that I was a bit vulnerable, really, because the times he's promised not to do it and still gone and done it, you know. Even at the fault of losing the marriage, losing the children. We wasn't in a bad financial way. We've got a nice home. He really didn't need to do it. But he did it. So.
That's it, sir.
Tony and Frank fit the criminal brain pattern revealed by new research. The rough and tumble of growing up, the inevitable accidents of youth can compromise the brain. Another weight on the scales of disadvantage to add to the social or economic ones, tilting the balance to crime.
You need a combination of factors to become a criminal. It's a little like a poker game. It doesn't help to have a 10, Jack, Queen, King. You also need the ace. And every one of those is equally important, because if you don't have one, you're not going to have the flush, and you won't have the criminal behavior, as an analogy.
Get it out of ya!
So are they both the victims of their brains, the prisoners of their biology? Are they guilty?
Come on, that's
One could argue that they are victims of their brain dysfunction,
and don't have the same control that a normal person does.
But if you say that the psychologists are saying that if it's a brain disorder, you're not guilty, I'd love to go along on that one. But that's the easy way out. I mean, I know what is right and what is wrong. The fact that I act before I think, is that an excuse? I'd love to think it was, but I don't think it'll be accepted.
If we were to diagnose some career criminals as suffering from a disorder, doesn't this give a carte blanche towards excusing such behaviour? No, absolutely not. Even though they may be suffering from a disorder, we still need to institutionalise them. We need to protect society.
Treatment in prison is virtually unknown. But what if Frank had been offered the help that Cody, Lauren and Danny had? Could he have avoided a lifetime of failure and disappointment?
I think if I'd have been good at anything, if I could train properly, I think that would have been my life. If I'd have been able to box, I don't think I'd have took to crime. I think it's because I was a failure that then I took the crime. I was a failure at crime and all.
And what about Tony? Would we recognise the danger signs in another young Tony today?
When I look back now, my inability to sit still or concentration could be, or may be, one of the reasons I'm sat here now. If we could have spotted that, perhaps, but we're looking now and I'm 50 years of age, it's a bit late. We just want to see where the future goes from here. One prays and honestly and genuinely believes that this is it. But I said that last time and totally convinced myself last time that the last time was enough. You've got a funny face all
the temptations of freedom are a long way off. Tony has still got 4 years of his sentence to serve.
Thank you. Or translated.
Oh, that's what I think. It's so sad. He's such a nice... I know he's my brother and perhaps I'm a bit biased, but then he's such a nice guy to have wasted his life like this. It really is so sad.
I'm not used to babies.
Could what we know today have salvaged that wasted life and spared us all the misery and expense of Tony's criminality? Recognising the biological roots of crime seems to have worked for our American children, breaking the chains that bound them to a seemingly inevitable delinquent career. Lauren is growing up to be a normal little girl in a family that had the courage to recognise that she was ill and needed help.
And what Brina taught me is that I could hate this disorder and love the child. And I fell in love with Lauren. I mean, she really was a beautiful child with an ugly disease.
R-E-D.
Cody, too, is showing signs that the treatment is beginning to work.
Cody is very intelligent for his age, and since we've been working with him, I know that he's not going to go to prison. He's going to go to college, become a doctor, a lawyer.
Not 1/1000th of the cost of criminal justice has been spent on trying new methods like raising arousal levels with adult criminals. But at least we now know that biology need not set our destinies, unless we let it.
We didn't really understand it, but we just saw the results of it, which were astonishing, amazing. I don't know if he would have lived without it. That's how strongly I feel about it. And I was so skeptical in the beginning that, thank God, I took a chance and he did it. I would have never known.
Danny can now look forward to the rest of his life. Our second program will explore whether or not the same clinical understanding of the brain that saved him could apply to the violent offender.